Have you ever felt like there's something watching you, lurking in the dark, just beyond what your eyes can see? There's a legend that has haunted Virginia for decades. The locals call it reality, a chilling figure said to appear during dark rituals and occult practices. They say reality isn't just a spirit, it's something far worse. This story takes us back to the 1970s, when Virginia was buzzing with tales of secret ceremonies, shadowy figures, and, ultimately, unexplained deaths. Today, we're peeling back the layers of the legend, diving into the truth of these terrifying rituals and trying to understand who, or what, reality really is. Join me as we go beyond the urban myth and explore what may be one of the darkest chapters in Virginia's history. In the 1970s, the world was going through massive cultural shifts. The hippie era was fading, and America was entering a time of uncertainty, skepticism, and fear of the unknown. Virginia, like many other places, had its share of secret societies and rumors of occult practices. Most of these were dismissed as harmless, the whispered tales of bored teenagers or overactive imaginations. But one story stood out, the story of reality. It started with the small town of Blackridge, a place barely on the map, surrounded by thick forests and winding rivers. Blackridge was quiet, a close-knit community where everyone knew each other. But in 1973, whispers began about strange gatherings in the woods. People claimed they could hear chanting late at night, bonfires flickering in the distance, casting eerie shadows against the trees. Dogs would bark and whimper, and locals said the animals could sense something they couldn't. One evening, a young couple, Ethan and Laura, was driving back from a party. They had enjoyed the night, filled with laughter and music, and were now heading home, the car's headlights cutting through the darkness, when their car broke down on the outskirts of Blackridge, right by the woods. The engine sputtered and died, leaving them stranded in the middle of nowhere. It was a chilly night, and while waiting for a friend to come help, they heard something disturbing. The silence of the night was broken by an eerie sound. At first it was just faint voices, barely a whisper. The wind seemed to carry the sound, making it hard to pinpoint its origin. Then the voices grew louder, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. It was as if the forest itself was alive, calling out to them. Ethan, curious but cautious, suggested they go check it out. He felt an inexplicable pull towards the sound, a mix of curiosity and dread. Laura was hesitant, but eventually they both stepped into the forest, led by the distant flicker of light and the chanting that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The deeper they went, the more surreal the experience became. As they approached, the couple saw a circle of hooded figures around a massive bonfire. The flames danced wildly, casting long, eerie shadows. The air was thick with the smell of burning herbs, and strange symbols were drawn in the dirt. The symbols seemed to glow faintly in the firelight, adding to the otherworldly atmosphere. But it wasn't the chanting or the symbols that terrified them, it was the feeling. A deep, primal fear took hold of them, as if they were intruding on something ancient and powerful. Ethan described it later as the sensation of reality slipping away, like they were no longer in the same world. The forest seemed to warp and twist around them, making it hard to distinguish what was real. And in the center of that circle, surrounded by those dark figures, was a shadowy presence that seemed to shift and pulse with the flames. It was as if the very essence of darkness had taken form. Reality, that's what they started calling it. The experience was so surreal, so beyond their understanding, that it felt like they had stepped into a different reality altogether. Ethan and Laura fled that night, terrified. They ran as fast as they could, the forest seeming to close in around them, the chanting still echoing in their ears. But the strangest part came after. Even after they returned to the safety of their home, the memory of that night haunted them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they had glimpsed something forbidden, something that was never meant to be seen by human eyes. Ethan began to have visions, nightmares that he couldn't shake off, even when awake. He would see shadowy figures watching him, hear whispers when he was alone. Laura, too, felt as if she was being watched, as if something had followed them out of those woods. The couple shared their story, and soon, others came forward with similar experiences. One of these people was Frank, a retired police officer who had once investigated the strange gatherings. He said he'd seen things he couldn't explain, patterns of missing animals, strange symbols appearing in random places around town, and even reports of people going missing, only to return days later with no memory of where they'd been. Frank warned everyone to stay away from the woods, but by now, the legend of reality was spreading. The rituals grew darker, and the stories only got more horrifying. In 1975, a group of teenagers decided to prove the legend wrong. They were determined to show everyone that the stories were just that, stories. They were skeptics, laughing off the idea of reality as nothing more than an old wives' tale. They scoffed at the warnings, convinced that nothing would happen. Armed with flashlights and bravado, they ventured into the woods, determined to debunk the myth. They joked and laughed, their voices echoing through the trees, masking any sense of fear. But, well, they were never seen again. Their flashlights were found abandoned, scattered along the forest path, as if dropped in a hurry. Their disappearance remains unsolved to this day, though some claim they saw shadowy figures near the woods the night they went missing. These figures were described as tall and indistinct, blending into the darkness. Rumors grew that they had tried to contact reality directly, and something had answered. Some say they performed a ritual, hoping to summon whatever lurked in the shadows. As the years went on, even the most hardened skeptics couldn't ignore the strange occurrences in Black Ridge. The town became known for its eerie atmosphere and unexplained events. Local police received countless reports of people seeing dark figures in their homes at night, hearing whispers, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the walls between worlds were thinning. The sense of unease grew, and the legend of the teenager's disappearance became a chilling reminder of the unknown. A local historian, Margaret, had a theory. She believed the ritual gatherings were a continuation of ancient pagan practices that aimed to open a gateway between our world and another realm. But Margaret took it a step further. She claimed that reality was not a ghost or a demon, but an entity born out of collective fear and belief. She said that the more people believed in reality, the stronger it became. Margaret's theory sparked even more fear. People started leaving Black Ridge, unwilling to risk their lives over a legend. But there were some who felt they could confront reality, that they could end the hauntings once and for all. In 1979, a group of brave locals, led by Margaret herself, decided to destroy the remnants of the ritual site in the woods. They had heard the stories, the whispers of dark rituals, and the strange occurrences that plagued their town for decades. Armed with holy symbols, crosses, and a strong sense of purpose, they ventured into the forest, determined to face whatever darkness lay within. They believed that by confronting the source of the legend, they could finally bring peace to their community. But according to the survivors, when they reached the clearing, it was empty. The air was thick with anticipation, and they could feel their hearts pounding in their chests. No symbols, no remnants of rituals, just an eerie silence. The clearing seemed untouched, as if the forest itself had swallowed any evidence of the dark practices that once took place there. Some say that as they looked around, they could feel the eyes of something watching, an invisible force surrounding them, judging them. The feeling was so intense that it sent shivers down their spines. One of them, an elderly man named Thomas, claimed he heard a voice in his mind, soft but clear, saying, "You cannot destroy what you've already created." The words echoed in his mind, leaving him with a sense of dread and helplessness. They left the woods that night, shaken, but determined to end the legend of reality once and for all. Despite their fear, they vowed to continue their efforts, believing that the truth would eventually come to light and the darkness would be vanquished. Yet the legend lived on. Even after the gathering stopped and people moved away, the memory of reality stayed. People still reported seeing shadowy figures, hearing strange whispers, feeling the cold, unexplainable presence that marked reality. To this day, reality remains a mystery, a figure lurking in Virginia's past. Was it all mass hysteria, the result of a small town feeding into fear and superstition? Or is reality something else? Something that was summoned, intentionally or not, by those long-ago rituals? Some say that as long as we remember the legend, as long as we speak its name, reality continues to exist, feeding on our fear, waiting in the shadows. And so the question remains, was reality just a story? Or was it a door to something beyond our understanding? Something that's still watching, still waiting, and perhaps even closer than we think?